So this is about designing a training video, and in particular, looking at what makes a training video different from any other sort of video you want to make, like a personal training video of your holiday or something. So I think the first thing, which is kind of stating the obvious, is that a training video implies that somebody who watches it is going to be able to, is going to learn to be able to do something at the end of it. So you need to start off with a set of learning objectives. This is really, really crucial. You must have all said it to your trainee teachers at some point. It's no different from any other lesson. Start with your learning objectives, and start with and learning objectives which you can actually frame in terms of what the viewers are going to be able to do at the end of it. It's got to be action-based. And just as an example of this, and in fact, the example I used the right way through the presentation has got nothing to do with employment services, quite deliberately. A, because I know nothing about employment services, and secondly, because I don't want everybody to get hung up with the content of the objectives. So we were working with some construction trainers in Germany, and they were working on some videos about forklift truck drivers. So one sort of video, one sort of objective that they wrote was something like trainees will be able to understand the techniques of forklift trucks. Now this is crazy and really unsuitable because there's no way they had to test it afterwards. So they rewrote it and said something like, we'll be able to maneuver pallets in a confined space. Much better. It's measurable, it's testable. Second thing I'd say about writing objectives is that you really don't need more than about 4 or 5 in a training video. If you've got more than that, you really ought to think about cutting it into several smaller videos. And I think the last thing I'd say is that although I use training objectives to describe what students are going to learn, lots of people are going to use learning outputs, learning outcomes, competencies. There's a big debate raging around this. I don't really care. As long as you can specify what you want your students to achieve, I think that's fine. Is that okay with people? Okay. Next thing, obviously, is identifying as far as possible your audience. Now, this is obviously really difficult if you're running a MOOC. But you have to kind of guess. And if you're running a training video, if you make a training video for your own organisation, you have to do some background research and see if you can identify who the people are that you watch. I can hear a lot of noise in the background. Is that me? No. Okay. You need to find out, if you can, what sort of skills they've got, what pre-existing knowledge they've got, what expertise they've got, what their level of competency is already. It's fairly obvious. You need to find out how interested they are, because is this a training video that you're going to make that people in an organisation can be forced to watch, or is it something which they have the option of watching? So is it compulsory or not? And I mean, I have to say that so many training videos are about really boring subjects and you have no control over them. I mean, I've yet to find a training video on health and safety which has been anything other than gruesomely boring to anybody except a health and safety officer. People are kind of just not interested in that sort of topic. Certainly not people who work in offices and things. So your training videos have to be really good to keep any sort of interest going. What motivates people? So over and above interest, why are they actually doing this? We'll come back to that one. And I think finally, it's what's the demographic of the group? Are they older workers? Are they younger workers? Is it a mixed age thing? Are they kind of mainly men, mainly women? And does that matter? Because it might. What's their level of educational attainment? What's their academic background? Because things like that will give you a clue as to what sort of language register might be appropriate. So find out as much as you can about the demographic. I mean, some of your employees, some of the people who are going to be watching your video won't even know what a forklift truck is. They're going to be very new employees, very inexperienced, and you might have to actually spell everything out. you're going to get other experienced employees who are going to feel really patronised and insulted if you give them that sort of basic level of information. So that's really important. Some people, this is in the group that we worked with, were very, very motivated because they were warehouse men who needed to be able to learn this extra skill of driving a truck in order to secure their existing employment or enhance their chances of being kept on, and also give them a pathway to promotion. On the other hand, and this looks sexist, but it kind of represents reality, you might get a real low-wage clerk in an office who has to watch a video about some new form that somebody's invented, and really they don't give a damn. So demographic really important. Videos for the second group have to be particularly interesting, witty, amusing, funny to grab their attention. So all of this is about saying find out as much as you can about the demographics of the audience. The other thing you're going to kind of have to find out about is how people are going to access this video. You actually have to make it, but you need to know what's going to happen to it in use. So is it typically going to be shown in a big auditorium with high-tech, state-of-the-art technical equipment, PA system, public address systems, and so on? Or are people just going to go into a computer room or into their office and watch it on some sort of desktop machine? Is it going to be shown in a training centre, a sort of learning pod, or a communal area where people can go over to a television, or it's running on a loop on a computer or something? Is it a kind of just-in-time video in terms of its content, you know, the sort of thing that people need to refer to rather than watch once, whereby people are going to typically access it on a mobile device, at their desk, in a car, out on a building site? Or is it something which is purely a long-term project where people can watch this series of videos in their own time, at their own pace, in their leisure time? So all of those will actually impact on the way that you design your video. Another thing to take into account, is this video replacing a trainer? Is it actually a substitute for a trainer? So is it a standalone video that people can just watch when they want to? Is it an asynchronous resource? Or is it a video that's actually going to be an audiovisual aid for a trainer? Is it a video that's going to be watched when there's a trainer or a teacher present who can respond to questions, clarify issues, maybe provide examples, so you don't have to worry about all that stuff? You can put the bare bones up and let the trainer fill in examples, context, illustrations, and so on. So that's something else to take into account. You also have to think about the run time, because I often say to people, well, how long is your video going to be? And then they say, as long as it takes. And that is like, not on. This does not work for me. You have to think about how long you can possibly make this video. And I can tell you now that between 10 and 15 minutes is the absolute longest time that you can get people's attentions. I mean, we're not talking a full-length feature film. We're not talking Star Wars here. We're talking about a video which could actually be talking about something like manual handling in offices or something. There is nothing inherently interesting about this, and people's brains and their bottoms turn to stone after about 10 minutes. And I'd say, really, if you're talking about something that even takes 10 minutes, think about breaking it down into maybe 3 or 4 shorter videos of 2, 3, 4 minutes each. The other advantage of having a kind of series of short linked videos is that they're much more versatile in an organisation, because with little tiny videos, just taking one bit of a subject, you can quite often mix and match them across the whole organisation for people doing different jobs. Whereas if you make kind of a quarter of an hour video, it's going to be so specific that it's probably only relevant to a small number of people. So I'd say modularize your training videos as far as possible. What else? It's defining the scope of your video. You've got your objectives, but really this is about the content. Just how far are you going to go with it? What are the parameters? What are the edges? and I'd say keep it tight. Keep the content really, really, really tight. You do not want to be, if the content doesn't one-to-one match one of your objectives, get rid of it. And also get rid of stuff that is actually just noise on the system. I mean, do you really, really need the organisation's mission statement at the beginning? Do you really need the Chief Executive Officer doing an introduction? Do you really need to have a screen stating your objectives in advance? I don't think you do. So keep it very tight. Keep cutting. Cut length. Cut the number of objectives. Cut the content. Pare it down to its bare bones. Even cut the time you spend filming, because there's always a sense of, if you make some wonderful footage, you think, I must use this even if it's not relevant. And I'd also say you need to cut the length of the film clips that you use. 7 seconds is more than enough for one visual, for one clip on the screen. It's no secret that the reason that Animoto restrict the length of your clips to 10 seconds is because it looks better. So, you know, you look at any feature film, any documentary, and you'll find that between 7 and 10 seconds is the longest that people are ever going to be expected to watch a sequence. Closely linked to that is the level of granularity that you're going to look for in your content. So granularity is just really another way of saying how dense is the content going to be. How much detail is going to go in there. So for instance, I'm going back to my forklift trucks again. The video could say something like, drive your forklift truck over to the loading area. Now this clearly has too little information to make anybody understand what's expected of them. Conversely, you can have a video which said something like, right, first identify the ignition key, find the pointy end, insert that in the ignition lock, turn it anti-clockwise, and so on. Obviously a level of detail that really isn't necessary. And for me, one of the hardest jobs is to work out the level of granularity that you're going for. It's always difficult. And I get it wrong constantly, but, you know, hey, I'm still practicing. But above all, work out what your key messages are. I actually write these out and put them on a wall, on a poster, especially if there's lots of people working on the same thing, because if everybody knows what your key messages are, people are very, very focused, even before they pick up a camera, as to what they're looking for when they go out filming. And I think lastly, I want to talk about some of the constraints that you will face, every video maker faces. To get a high quality video, you're actually talking about dealing with kind of 3 things. You've got to consider the work that you're actually putting into it. That's all of the planning, all of the filming, all of the content. So there's the scope of it. You've got a budget to work to, and even if it's not a real budget, it's coming out of your time, it's coming out of your departmental budget, and you've got the length, you've got an amount of time you've got to make the video in, and all of those will impact on quality. If you change any one, they'll all change, and they will all impact on quality. So put another way, I always think that it's like any other project. Making a video, you've got kind of tensions going on. You have to get it done on schedule, you have to get it done within the budget, you have to manage the workload, but on the other hand, you've got to start paying money out for people, for materials, for equipment, and so on. If the video you make doesn't actually do the job, then it's all been a waste of time anyway. And you've also got to take into account that there will be constant obstacles in your way. And I'm just going to have a quick look at some of the obstacles. One of the biggest obstacles that you might find is scheduling. Now, scheduling is not just about how much time I've got to produce this in, but what time slots are available for me to do it. I mean, Angela and I worked with a local film crew some years ago, really good local film company, and they had to make a film in the indoor market in Pontypridd. They could only access the building after 7 o'clock at night and before 7 o'clock in the morning. So they were actually filming with floodlights on all through the night, and we were kind of part of that. The other one, for instance, and this was quite a funny story, a friend of mine is a highways engineer, and he was asked to make a video for new roadmen about how to use the snowplow or how to organise the snowplow being used. And guess what? It was July. So that was quite limiting in making a video about snowplows. You've also got budget constraints. Well, everybody knows that you're going to have budget constraints, which I think the only advice I give is that you have to think of every eventuality in advance at the storyboarding stage. So, for instance, you've got your storyboard, you get to slide number 87A, and you think, hell's teeth, I need a wide-angle lens. Now, at that point, are you going to go out and buy one? Do you rent one? Do you change the storyboard? But it's that early on you have to think about things like that. And I mean, just as a laugh, quite often, if it's a video and you think, oh, I'm going to end up with a humorous last scene. Right, I know, this is such a boring video, I'm going to have a shot at the end of it with a sort of Lawrence of Arabia lookalike on a white charger galloping off the screen in this really boring video about health and safety or something. But, you know, hey, how are you going to do that? How much is that going to cost? That is completely unrealistic. You also need to think about your equipment, because if you've got this sort of equipment, the capabilities and the capacity is pretty unlimited. It'll only be limited, in fact, by the expertise of the people using it, and that's not to be underestimated. Most expensive is not always best if you don't have the human resources to use the camera properly. Alternatively, you might have one of these, and that's something else you're going to have to take into account when you're storyboarding, because if you want complicated panning and zooming and filtering, you're not going to do it with your Lego camera. That said, you can use almost any device. I mean, it really doesn't matter whether you're going to use your mobile phone, your tablet, a flip video camera, a camcorder, one of these big professional jobs. Any one of those will do the job. So don't get depressed if you've only got one of these. You know, we've made stuff with mobile phones quite often. So yeah, know the capabilities of your equipment before you start storyboarding. I think the other thing I'd want to say is, in a training video, you can mix your media wonderfully. So you can have pure video clips. You can also have screens with nothing but text on them if you want to. You can have still pictures. You can have just ordinary images, which you can keep on the screen for as long as you want to. You can put screencasts in. You can put music over. You can put voices over. I mean, this is not a feature film. You've actually got opportunities that, you know, Steven Spielberg hasn't got, because in a training video, the more media types you can introduce, quite often the livelier it becomes. So you're not restricted to just video, and that's a biggie for me.
Can I just interrupt, Jen?
Sure.
Just a quick question, because this is always coming up also with using pictures in PowerPoint and so on in presentations. How about the whole copyright and stuff? I mean, for using music, for example, I of course need music, and since I'm not good at playing guitar, I would need somewhere to get the music, for example.
Good question, because one of the things we were going to talk about later on today, later on this morning, was finding copyright-free pictures and music. There are sites, and what is the music site? Jimeo. Do you remember?
There's Jamendo, but
yeah.
I put a link. Oh, I will put a link. I put one to pictures, but I've also got just a collection of where to get Creative Commons and license-free music. There's about 10 or 11 sites. Some public archive stuff as well. There's quite a lot of places you can get stuff from, but you do need to have software like GarageBand or Audacity to be able to use it properly.
Yeah. I mean, I think all these different design elements which you can incorporate in a training video just add to the interest factor. You've actually got opportunities in a training video that the documentary producers and the feature film producers actually don't have. Right. I think the only other thing, and might not affect a lot of people, because it's actually about working with clients. Now, at the moment, you are your only client, which is fine, but at some point you will have to think about making videos for other people, not paying clients, not external clients, but probably clients who might be your training department, your line manager, or even this project. And working with clients, whoever they are, there are kind of a couple of tips that I'd want to share, and this is positively the last slide. The one thing I'd say with clients is make sure you've got one contact person to make the decisions, because it's just a nightmare when you've got like a board of people. Clients never want to take decisions about saying, yeah, that's fine, go with it. They always want to say things like, well, I have to show it to the governors, or I have to show it to the senior management team and get their input. And you think, oh, God, it's going to take ages. Following on from that, I'd say when you're scheduling and you're presenting your schedule to the client who wants it in 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is, frame your schedule not in terms of dates, but in terms of units of time. So you don't say, we will start filming on the 1st of March, because guess what? Your client might not have approved the script or the storyboard until the 1st of April. So what I tend to say is, okay, we will start filming this video 10 days after you've approved the script and the storyboard, or something like that. And it's also worth telling them how many iterations you're prepared to do. So it's like saying, okay, I want 4 sign-offs. I want a sign-off at the original concept stage to say that you like the ideas. I want to sign off in writing as soon as we've done the storyboard. I want to sign off at the final edit. But for instance, when I say I want to sign off at the storyboard stage or the script stage, I am prepared to do 3 iterations. The first draft, the revised second draft, and the final cut, and that's your lot. And I think that, for me, is really important. And even if this is your own line manager, try and tighten that down, because making a training video can just, the time you waste with clients not actually getting their act together, I reckon is one of the biggest problems. And it really is. The minute somebody says to me, can I just run this past the senior management team and get their input, I just groan, because it really is a kiss of death. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to